Hi, I'm Simon Cox, striker, and I've played for Reading, West Brom, Nottingham Forest.
Thank you for joining us today. Let's have a look back on your career. It's been an eventful one with loads of ups and downs. And we'll start off at the very beginning. You came through the Reading Academy, but as you were coming through, that's when Reading were peak Reading, weren't they, in the Premier League? And you didn't get much of a look in at the time. Do you think it's because they were doing so well, or do you reckon you should have had a look in?
Always backing my ability, I always think I should have had a look in. But when you've got the likes of Kevin Doyle, Shane Long, Dave Kitson, Leroy Lita, all scoring goals, all performing well, it's very, very hard to get a look in. So I had to basically wait my time for the cup games. But even then I was on the bench and coming on for sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes at the end. So it was very, very hard to get a look in.
Yeah, as you say, plenty of talent ahead of you, and that meant you had to go out on loan a couple of times. One of them was at Brentford, and you broke your leg when you were just 19. When you're a player and you suffer such a serious injury at such a young age, what was that like at the time?
Yeah, it was tough because I just felt that I was getting started, and I broke my leg, London derby away at Millwall. And it was at a time where I thought, like I said, I thought I was getting started in my career and I was doing okay. I was performing well in the game. I remember it. I had a tackle from behind and I carried on. I carried on in the game, but something wasn't right. So I had to obviously come off, then went for the x-rays and stuff, and then realized what the extent of the injury that I'd done. But you have to get yourself in a mindset that it's going to be a setback. It's going to be 6 to 8 weeks, 10 weeks if your rehab doesn't go as planned. And then you just try and come back as quick as you can because I was in that flow of football.
You say you carried on with a broken leg?
Yeah. So I came off and I thought I'd just just sort of like, I don't know, just a kick, and it was something, I knew something wasn't right, but I thought maybe I'm able to run it off, and I carried on for another sort of 5-6 minutes or so, and then flew into a tackle, and then it never went away. So I was like, I'll have to call this one a day.
It's not bad going. I think I'd just be instantly calling it a day as soon as I felt that. But you left Reading to go to Swindon, and you quite frankly became a goal machine there, didn't you? In your last season, you scored 29 goals in League One. What was it about the club that made you play so well?
It was the players around me. It was we had 2 wingers, we had 2 centre forwards, we had a team that played the way that I wanted it to play, crosses into the box. I had a strike partner who was the taller one of the two of us, who took all the bumps and bruises and the kicks and everything else, and I was the one who sort of ran in behind and was able to get the chances. You speak to a lot of strikers and they normally have 1 or 2 seasons where they have that purple patch where everything they hit just goes in, and that was my season really. It was I got to a point where I felt invincible in front of goal, and like I say, it was all based on the team around me that I had, who were supplying me with ammunition.
Yeah, because you didn't really, and I mean this with no disrespect, you didn't really score as many goals elsewhere at the likes of West Brom, Forest and Reading. Was it just down to the role and basically because you were the man who was there to finish off those chances?
Possibly, but I went to other clubs being that same man. When West Brom came down from the Premier League to the Championship, I was brought in to do the exact same job. But I always feel that I went from Reading to a sort of lower league club where I was seen as the best player at the club. So that it was all the pressure was heaped on my shoulders. When you go from, say, Swindon to West Brom, you're just another player in a pool of players who are very, very good. And the ones who come out of that pool are the best players, and I had to go there, and you have to change your game, you have to adapt your game because it's a completely different level to what I was playing, different way of playing from the team and the manager. It just happens that way.
Well, you went to West Brom, as you say. Actually, before we move on, why West Brom? Because you had quite a bit of interest from other clubs, didn't you?
Yeah, very strange actually. Of the three clubs I had that were seriously interested in me, none of them had managers.
Ah.
At the time anyway. So West Brom, Celtic and Newcastle. Newcastle and West Brom obviously got relegated from the Premier League. Alan Shearer was a manager in Newcastle at the time. Obviously he didn't take over. West Brom had Tony Mowbray, who in turn went to Celtic. So Celtic were without a manager at the time when they were interested. So there was obviously a crossover there. And then West Brom were basically the first ones to the pump because Newcastle and Celtic hadn't appointed their managers at the time. So, but listen, it was a team that, like I say, just come down from the Premier League who wanted to go back up at the first return. So it was a good decision, I thought.
Yeah, and they did go up straight away, didn't they? And as you said, it was a very talented team, wasn't it? It's one of my favourite teams I've ever been in the Championship. You've got, prime Chris Brunt, James Morrison, Graham Dorrans. Everyone forgets about him, but it was a bloody good team, wasn't it?
It was a good team. I was actually watching one of Graham Dorrans' goals earlier in the dressing room over here because he's now with me over here.
Okay.
So it was a Premier League goal, but it was a goal nonetheless, and I was just playing it, and all you could hear was him just giggling to himself in the corner because you could hear the commentary. But no, it was a really, really good team. A team that we'd only lost, I think, 2 or 3 from the Premier League squad. Paul Robinson and Jonathan Green, I think, left. One went to Watford, one went to Fulham, I think. We had Scott Carson, Jonas Olsen at the back. Every Robert Corran still in there. Listen, it was a team littered with Premier League quality, and I had to sort of go in and look at myself and, like I say, adapt because I couldn't be the same player at Swindon that I could be at West Brom. 2 completely different styles of play, 2 completely different attitudes at the clubs, and you have to adapt, and that was what I had to do.
Yeah, and there are quite a few decent strikers there at the time as well. So when you came in, were you like, crikey, I've got a job in my hands here, getting into this side?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that sort of sold me on West Brom was I watched one of their games before I knew they were seriously interested. They played an FA Cup game against Bristol Rovers, and they won 5-1 or something like that. Ishmael Miller scored 3, and I looked at Big Ish, and I looked at myself. I thought, this is a guy I can play with. Similar sort of thing, like the bigger of the 2, the more powerful one of the 2 of us. But just unfortunately, he did his cruciate towards the end of the Premier League season. So he was injured when I came in. Then he did it again during his rehab. And then he just never really came back and got himself in. But then we had Luke Moore. Chris Wood was a young up-and-coming striker at the time as well. We had Roman Bednar, who'd obviously come back from a ban as well. So it was a squad that had good quality in it.
Yeah, definitely. Roberto Di Matteo was the manager at the time. Were you a fan of his?
I was at the start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, like he came in, obviously, listen, he was a top player and had a really, really good career. He was a young manager at the time. Obviously only managed MK Dons, and I think he was only there for a year or 18 months, MK Dons, and he got the West Brom job. But again, he was like a young up-and-coming manager, but just sort of let the dressing room dictate what was going on. Like you said, some of the players we've mentioned already before basically run the dressing room. And he didn't really have a lot to do, I'll be honest.
Okay. So why were you a fan of his at the start? and then not towards the end of his reign?
I'm not saying I wasn't a fan I wasn't a fan of his towards the end. I think when we got promoted to the Premier League, I think he just became a little bit out of his depth, being a young manager, just purely and simply on the basis that when you're one of the best teams in the Championship and you get promoted to them being the mindset changes to being, one of the teams that is fighting relegation, and you still stick with the same tactics, it's a little bit different to the Championship. So it's so when you get promoted to the Premier League, your mindset has to change, and you have to play a different system, maybe, or a different philosophy of playing. And he didn't really have that.
Yeah, fair enough. Back to you then. What was it like being sold by Reading to going up automatically with West Brom to the Premier League in just the space of 2 years? Because that's quite a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it was a point to be proven, really. Reading obviously had their sell-on clause, so they knew that there was a player in there. They just knew that I wasn't able to play for Reading because of the people that we've mentioned before. But when you get sort of that move to West Brom, and then you go and win or come second in the Championship to get promoted to the Premier League, it's sort of like, I proved you wrong. I was good enough. All I needed was that chance.
Well, you got to the Premier League, had a few sporadic appearances, didn't you? You only managed 1 goal in 2 seasons, but it wasn't a bad goal, was it? 30-yard screamer, White Hart Lane. Talk us through that. How was it?
It was because it's my one and only, and it wasn't a bad one. It means the world to me. I think it was around about this time of the year as well. It's April time. It was such a surreal, like all of my appearances in the Premier League are all surreal to me, because again, it's one thing getting to the Championship and playing and winning that. But then when you get to the Premier League and you sort of make your appearances and you end up scoring your goal, again, I wish I would have been able to play a lot more so I could showcase. But then again, it comes down to getting that chance and taking it, really. The goal, yeah, I mean, it like I say, it means the world to me. The sort of cutting and the curl on it, and it's one of those goals that I'll always be remembered for, and I'll keep in my highlight reel.
Right, it's definitely what's keeping your highlight reel. It's an unreal goal. Di Matteo was sacked halfway through that first Premier League season, and Roy Hodgson came in. Did you enjoy working with Roy?
I did, yeah, and by all accounts, he liked working with me. I probably would have stayed a little bit longer if he didn't get the England job. So, because I think I played majority of my performances under Roy. So I loved it. I thought he was the nicest guy in the world. He'd give everybody their 5 minutes a day. He's open. He was honest. Tactically very good. As you can see, he's been in the Premier League for a number of years with different clubs. He got us to a 9th, 8th finish in the Premier League. Just missing out in Europe. Like that's an unbelievable achievement for a West Bromwich Albion team. So I loved every minute of it. It was just a shame that, we were only together for a short period of time.
Yeah, it was just a short period, because you went to Forest in July 2012, which was an interesting time to join the club. Steve Cotterill was manager at the time. And am I right in saying he got sacked a few days after you joined?
Yeah, I think Sean O'Driscoll was the manager at the time. Then Steve Cotterill, then Sean O'Driscoll. It was one or the other. I think I sat down with Sean O'Driscoll.
Right, okay. Because when I was doing my research for this, it said you signed on like the 8th of July, and then Steve Cotterill was sacked on like the 12th of July. So I wasn't sure if that was 100% correct or not. But when you signed, which manager were you talking to?
I was talking to Sean O'Driscoll.
Right, okay.
Which was strange, because obviously there'd been a big sort of merry-go-round in obviously the takeover. Managers had sort of come and gone through that summer period. And I signed, I went to the training ground. I met the owner at the time. He sort of set out their plan for what the club was going to be looking like for that season and the seasons coming. It was just a bit of a strange time at the club. Obviously, one to be excited about because, as you can see, it was a Middle Eastern owner who took over, and you're thinking all of a sudden millions are coming into the club, and all these top players are going to be coming in, top managers. But then all of a sudden, one owner goes out the door, one manager goes out the door, new owners come in, who's his cousin. It was all a little bit of a mess, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess there, and it was also a bit of a mess with the manager situation because in the space of 7 months, they had Steve Cotterill, Sean O'Driscoll, Alex McLeish, and then Billy Davis. So for you as a player, when you've got a different manager every few months, that must be a bit confusing.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to knowing the manager who's coming in and hoping that they like you and you get on with them and all of that sort of stuff. So it can be unsettling, but ultimately, as players, you have to just get on with it. It's your job at the end of the day. But I mean, it doesn't help that you replace managers after. I mean, Alex McLeish, I think, was there 4 weeks, 5 weeks, if that, 7 games, I think it was. So that's not great for any club. That's not great for any set of players. So you have to have stability in that sense. But as you can see throughout Forest's last, 3 or 4, 5 years, it's been littered with owners, it's been littered with managers, it's been littered with players in and out the door, and it doesn't help.
No. When you get to that 7th manager and you've just gone through 4 managers in the space of a few months, and you consider that you are playing in the Premier League, as you quite rightly said, finished in the top half with West Brom literally less than a year before, were you kind of regretting moving to Forest?
Well, I didn't really have a choice about leaving West Brom, in all honesty, because Steve Clarke had come in and he told me that they were signing Romelu Lukaku on loan from Chelsea. So we had Romelu, we had Marc-Antoine Fortuné, Shane Long, Peter Odin-Wingy. Then there was going to be me. So it was 5 of us, and Steve was open to me and he said, look, it's going to be very, very hard for you. So go out and find a club and go and play. And I had Forest and Blackburn, who were the 2 clubs interested in me at the time. And I decided to go to Forest. It was down the road. I could live in Birmingham at the time. But it ultimately means that you want stability in your football club. And because when you don't get that, it's very, very unsettling.
Yeah, Lukaku's not a bad player to be replaced by, is it?
Let's talk on to has he?
Not much. Let's talk about one of the goals you scored for Forest. One of the best goals I've ever seen in the Championship, and one of the most unique I've ever seen as well. 50-yard pass from Lewis McGugan. Most players will let it fly over them so they can run onto it. Not Simon Cox. Pulls off its unbelievable first touch before it bounces. You lob it over Jack Butland. Honestly, anyone who's listening, stop what you're doing right now and search Simon Cox against Birmingham on YouTube. It is one of the most stunning goals you'll ever see. And the best bit is, after you score, you celebrate by getting the ball out of the goal, as if to say, yeah, it's fine, I do that all the time. Tell us about that goal.
I just come back off of international duty with Ireland, and I came off injured in that game. We played, I think we played Oman or someone in London, and I came back up. I was on crutches after the game and went back to Forest, and didn't think I was going to make the game. I was like really, really pushing, but because I came back on like the Thursday, I wasn't going to start the game, and we were down, I think down 2-0 or 2-1 in the game against Birmingham, and it was just one of those. It came over my shoulder. And I was like, I think I'm there. I think I can get there. So I sort of just hung out a leg. And then it's probably because of the strapping that I had on my foot. It just softened the touch. And then when it popped up, and I think it makes it so much better who the goalkeeper is as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
future England international, obviously gone on to do really well for himself. Jack Butland rushes out, and it just lobs it over him, and it was one of those. I think that got us back to either 2-2 or maybe got us back in the game at 2-1. So I was thinking, get the ball back on the halfway line. Let's go get it back. Let's go get another one quickly. You kind of want to score those goals in the 93rd minute to win the game, so you can jump in the crowd and you can have your shirt ripped off and all that sort of stuff, and full on wrapping it around your shoulders. And but yeah, that one was. I think that's probably the goal that is most recognisable for most people when they sort of hear my name.
Yeah, so it's all down to the strapping on your foot.
Absolutely.
So you're putting that goal above the Spurs goal, are you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the best goal I've scored in my career.
Fair play. What was it like working with Billy Davies? Because he was quite an outspoken manager, wasn't he? Did you enjoy playing under him?
I thought he was class, mate. I thought he was really, really good. I thought the most paranoid man in the world. But a lovely guy as well. He would train you hard, but he'd also dangle the carrot out in front of you as well. If you did train hard, you got this or you got that little carrot. So it was always good, and the staff that he had with him, we trained hard, and the thing is I think his paranoia sort of works against him a little bit, because as soon as you lose a game, he feels like everyone's talking about him, and that's probably not the case. And when we missed out the last day of the season, we got beat against Leicester. It was probably like the worst thing that could have happened to us, because we had a good team at that stage as well, and we probably should have made it into the playoffs. So I think we drew 2-2 in the end, and we needed to win.
See, he's remembered as quite a character, isn't he, and quite outspoken. But he was a good manager, wasn't he? Every team that he seems to have been part of, apart from that Derby Premier League season, every team has done well under him as a manager.
Yeah, I think players really like playing for him, though. That's the thing, because he makes you feel like a massive part of the team, regardless whether you're a star or someone from the bench, or even if you're one of the boys in the stands, he still makes you feel a part of it, which is, I think, great man management at the end of the day. Because the worst thing in the world, if you're the guy in the stands and you don't feel a part of it, you can 100% go the other way. But if you still feel a part of it, because he makes you feel that a big part of what he's doing, because he'll need you. You might, if it was me, I might go down injured one day, and all of a sudden the guy in the stands is now a starter for the next week. And if you've sort of lost your head because you're in the stands one week and he hasn't spoken to you, he hasn't made you feel a part of it, you're probably not going to play your best stuff the following week. Whereas if he makes you feel a part of it and that situation occurs, then I think you'll start playing well. And then stranger things have happened. You go from being in the stands to being a starter, and then all of a sudden you get a new contract and you're on your way. But that's all down to his man management skills, and like I say, he was enjoyable to play under.
Well, it was during your time at Forest that you were playing for Ireland. Went to Euro 2012 as well. How was that?
Brilliant, really, really good. Probably the best moment of my career, without any shadow of a doubt, because not many people get to go to a tournament as a player, let alone as a fan. As a fan, let alone as a player. So I think it was more the build up to the games that sort of took me by surprise, and getting there was incredible. But 3 days before, you'd see the hotel start to fill with people. Then 2 days, 1 day before, and all of a sudden the lobby, the bar, the bars around the hotel were all littered with green jerseys, and Irish supporters and the family and that have flown in. But then the day of the game, it's like nothing you've ever witnessed before. It's incredible. And just to be a part of that, I thought was a massive achievement for myself. And albeit results weren't great, but when you look at the group that we had, it was very hard to sort of come out of that, I thought. But not that we didn't try, obviously, but it was a group of death, in all honesty.
Yeah, Giovanni Trapattoni, were you a fan?
Yes and no. Obviously, like you look at what he done for his for like the Bayern teams and stuff that he's done, and obviously his famous rant on the Bayern team in the media. It shows the passion that he has, but I think the one thing that obviously let him down was his English. He couldn't speak great English at all, and I would have loved to have heard him speak English, or if he learned English, it would have been great to hear that passion come out, because that would have just resonated throughout the whole nation, really. And we would have, we probably would have gone on to do better than after that campaign. We probably would have gone on again and done something special again. But as soon as you fall flat in the Euros and then he gets replaced, it's very easy to see why, just purely and simply, not because of his English, but I think it was just a time for a change as well.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. Obviously, for anyone who's listening, if you haven't guessed by Simon's accent, he's not from Ireland. He's from Reading. Is there any friction between the non-Irish born players and those who are, full-blooded Irish?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. Yeah, I mean, there was probably a couple of times where I felt that they didn't really take to me, whether that was me and my personality or whether that was because I was born in England. But I remember one day I was sat with Richard Dunn, and he's Irish legend, and rightly so. And he's married to an English girl. His kids are obviously half Irish, half English. And I remember him coming up to me one day and he said, "Listen, if anybody ever give you any rubbish about not being born in Ireland," he said, "tell them to come and see me." And that sat really well with me, and that gave me the lift that I think I needed, really, just to feel a part of that team.
Did you get any trouble from Irish players?
Nah, not in the end. I told him to go see Danny, and then that was it.
Well, you left Forest in 2014 to go back to Reading. Why did you leave Forest?
Stuart Pearce came into Forest. He was in a really strange situation. He was still England under-21 manager at the time when he took over at Forest, and then he came to watch a few of the last 5 or 6 games at Forest, and then took over pre-season as the manager. And I sat down with him at the end of, coming towards the end of the pre-season, and we were about to play West Brom, funny enough, in the pre-season friendly, and he pulled me in and he said, "I want you to go in the make weight part of the Mikel Antonio deal from Sheffield Wednesday to Forest, and you go the other way." And I said, "No." I said, because if sometimes in those sort of deals, the club who wants the player, so Forest wanted Antonio, it probably doesn't mean that Sheffield Wednesday want me. Yeah. So you can end up finding yourself between a rock and a hard place if I end up going to Sheffield Wednesday. So I said to him, no, I said, if I'm going to leave this football club, I'm going to go to a club where they want me and I want to go to. So as it is, you phone your agent after the chat, and he said, okay, give me a few hours, give me the weekend. And he said, what do you think about going back to Reading? And I was, obviously my missus is from Reading as well. So we were like, listen, back home, friends, family, all of that sort of stuff. And it was pretty easy in the end to make that decision.
Well, the Reading team is a bit different compared to the one when you left. Is that a nervous laugh there?
Yeah. No, it was, yeah, you're just correcting what you said. It was very, very different. Yeah.
Yeah, the first season back, you finished 19th in the championship. What was
That was
wrong?
success, man, let me tell you.
What was that? Sorry.
That was success.
Bloody hell. Why was that success? What was wrong with the club at that point?
I think it seems to be a trend to wherever I go. The owner at Reading at the time was the Russian guy in the Premier League, and then they got relegated. And then the Russian guy basically pulled all his money out and said, like, I'm not doing this anymore. Didn't want to pay the bills and stuff like that. So the old chairman John Medeski had to take over, but he's a wealthy man, but doesn't have the sort of money that need to run a football club these days. And we had to sell the likes of Adam Lafondra, we had to sell Sean Morrison, we had to sell Alex McCarthy. Um, we still had people like Pavel Pogrebniak still on the books, who was on some serious wages. And then we had like people like Royston Drenthe, who was there, who we obviously had to get rid of as well, serious wages. So we had to get rid of all these players on big money, and Pavel was the only one who stayed. But I think that was purely and simply couldn't afford to get him out, really. And then and we had to deal with the fallout of that, which was basically play the under 23s, the lads who was basically what I was like the years and years before. So the lads who hadn't played a first team game, the lads who had only been used to under 23s football, reserve team football, and we just had to get on with it as best we could. So, but we did okay, mate. I'll be honest. We started off okay because, as you know, like young kids, they're full of energy. That sort of got us through the first few weeks, few months. But then all of a sudden, when you start playing Saturday, Tuesday, and they're not used to it and that sort of stuff, that's when you start being found out a little bit.
Yeah. What did you make of your own performances across that second spell? Because I think did you go something like 16 months without scoring? So what was the reason that you were struggling?
So that was the second year. So when I first went there, I started the season really well. I think I still ended up top goal scorer first season, 9 or 10, I think it was. And as I say, it was a struggle, but it wasn't too bad. But then it was at the stage when Steve Clarke came into Reading, is when I stopped playing, basically. I was injured in the pre-season. We'd just been taken over by the Thai owners. The boys were all on their way over to Thailand for pre-season. I stayed behind just because otherwise I'd lose too many days of non-training. So I stayed back, thought I was doing the right thing, in doubles, triple sessions every day to get myself to the level where they were. The boys came back, didn't start the season, played in a couple of like cup games and stuff. Hadn't scored a goal. Then at the last few days of the transfer window, of the loan window, I think I went on loan to Bristol City. Again, it was a similar thing. Sat on the bench, didn't play, came back in January when Steve Clarke got the sack. Ryan McDermott then took over. Somebody who knows me, somebody who has taught. I've been a player of his, and he's been my coach for a number of years in the youth team and the reserve teams. And I played, I think it was like 12 out of the last 15 games, and ended up scoring a goal on one of my last appearances away at Middlesbrough. And it just went on from the day that sort of I didn't go on the pre-season tour all the way through to that time where I scored against Middlesbrough. Everything just went wrong. Nothing went right. Couldn't find myself a place anywhere. And then that was it really. As soon as that season finished, I was done really.
Yeah. Why was everything going wrong at that point?
I don't know. I think I think Steve had the players that he wanted to play. He turned around. Some of the times I was being left out for young players, without him even talking to me, without him even giving me the time of day. And as I said about Billy Davis and the good man management, I feel that that was the poor man management side of things. Not that I felt entitled to have that chat, but I think when you've gone around sort of up and down the Premier League and obviously been to international level, I think just a little bit of respect level. I think there needed to be that, with Steve, and I never really got it, and that was an issue for me, and then the personality thing sort of. I'm obviously not his type of character that he wants, which is fine. That's not a problem. But ultimately, you have to be big enough and brave enough in the manager's seat that you have to be able to tell players these things, whether they like it or not. You're the manager. What you say goes. And then I went to Bristol City, and I don't know. I think things just didn't sit well with me there. I wasn't sure whether I was there to be punished or whether I was there to play or not. It just wasn't really something that sat well with me. Although I really, really enjoyed my time there. The group of players that they had, the camaraderie that they have in that dressing room or had in that dressing room at the time, because they went from League One Championship. It was such a pleasure to be a part of that. Um, Before heading back to Reading and being under somebody that was familiar to me.
Okay. Well, you left Reading to go to Southend, where you had a fantastic few years, didn't you? You found your goal
Yeah.
scoring touch again, scoring 41 goals in 3 seasons. What changed for you in that time?
Um, I think well, when you go from not playing, um, and realizing that you know your career could be really close to the end, you sort of wake up a little bit. And I went to Southend and tried to revive my career. Um, Went there, spoke with Phil Brown. Um, Again, probably felt like the main man again. Um, just things started to click again. I actually had a really rude awakening again at Southend. There was a time where I wasn't playing. Maybe I got a little bit too big for my boots a little bit when I was there, and had a little bit of a bust up with the assistant manager at the time. After one game, told me I was rubbish, which didn't sit well with me, obviously, but it was probably something that I needed to hear. And ultimately, buck up your ideas, otherwise we're going to go down, and you're going to be in League Two as quick as you were from League One to the Premier League. It was simple as that. So if we were going to do well that year, it was going to come from me scoring goals. So I had to again sit for a few games, but then as soon as I sort of found my goal scoring touch, it kind of never left me, which was nice.
Yeah. Well, the last season at Southend wasn't as good. Don't think that was through any fault of your own, though, because the last 2 seasons at Southend seem to have been a bit of a mess. What was going on in your last season at the club? Because I remember that being a particular mess.
So we stayed up on the last day of the season before.
Yeah.
Sunderland, euphoria, honestly, never felt anything like it. Even coming second in the championship, never felt anything like staying up on the last day. So that was incredible. And we just expected that roller coaster to carry on. Um, we expected Kevin Bond, who was the manager at the time, to be appointed that day, the next day, the following week or whatever. It went on and on and on throughout the summer. And then it was only until we got to a week before pre-season that he got appointed.
Mm.
Um, so then we couldn't. I don't think we signed anybody until a couple of weeks into pre-season. I don't think we sort of settled on anything. We went away for or the boys went down to went down to Bournemouth or down to Poole or somewhere like that for pre-season. I was injured at the time, so I didn't go. And then it was, we never really got going. We were late to everything in terms of getting going. And we were that team that everybody really enjoyed playing against. Then all of a sudden he gets to sack Kevin Bond. Then Gary Waddock takes over for a little bit, who was very good. He got us working really hard. We started putting good performances together, making a couple of draws, and we got a win here and there, and we felt like we were on the pathway to something. But then there was still the uncertainty because Henrik Larsson was sort of in amongst the bookies for whether he was going to be the new manager, and he was in the stands for the MK Dons game, which we won. And
what about that?
Yeah, it was one of the, like, we were like, oh, is he going to be appointed? Is he not? If he's at the game, surely he's, it was one of those. And then at the 11th hour, he decides he doesn't want it. So then it's like, oh, we're back to the drawing board. Then it was Sol Campbell who came in. So we were all a little bit like disheveled on the basis that we didn't know who we were going to get. Then all of a sudden we get Sol Campbell in. And he brings in Herman Hreidarsson, he brings in Andy Cole, he brings in a fitness guy who was at Arsenal, and Sol's way of playing is not the way that you need to be playing when you're 10, 12 points adrift at the bottom of the table. You can't be trying to play out from the back when teams are looking at you thinking, you're vulnerable here. You need to be getting it up the other end of the field. You need to be getting second balls. You need to be working harder than every other team. But we were trying to do things, and he just wasn't what we needed. So it sort of went from bad to worse, and that was a big issue.
I thought Sol Campbell did all right in his spell there. That might just be me from looking from the outside in. But were you not particularly a fan of his?
Nah, not a fan, mate. No, not at all. It just wasn't right, mate. It really wasn't. And but you look at his time at Macclesfield. I know he kept him up, but just things like, I was talking to one of my mates the other day who's listened to his podcast on one of the other channels, and it was like, he has all these non-negotiables about being late and things like that, and he was late for things, and you're just looking at it going, don't do that. Like, you're pulling the wool over people's eyes and sort of thing, and that's not right. Like, the players know when managers are lying to them, and that's the thing, and we sort of quickly saw through that.
Well, okay. Well, let's go to present day. You're now playing in Australia at the moment for Western Sydney Wanderers. How's that going? Sorry, I've just asked you during the spring water.
Yeah, really good, mate. Really, really, really enjoying it here, actually. So you go from the south end, the sort of the doom and gloom of the way things were going there, and then all of a sudden I got an opportunity to come here to Sydney, and it's been amazing. Let alone the weather and the beaches and all that sort of stuff. Football's been really good. Been really, really surprised with it. My club, Western Sydney Wanderers, they're sort of like one of the newest clubs out here, and everything's shiny, brand new, which is nice. Stadium's 30,000 seater capacity stadium. Training ground's got 9-10 pitches with an artificial mini stadium on it. Mate, it's amazing. This place is really, really good. I think I fell in love with football again from the Sol Campbell era to coming back over here. It was really, really good.
Yeah, and you haven't had much of a pandemic over there either, have you?
Hey, can't complain with that. So no, it's. I think the sun's kept it away from us, which is quite nice.
Yeah, not bad for you. What's the standard like in Australia? How would you compare it to over here?
So it's probably the biggest question, or the most question I get asked by everybody who I talk to about this. And I always say it's a mixture between sort of middle to bottom end championship to high end League One.
Okay.
Purely and simply on the basis that everybody over here, they want to play the right way. They want to play out from the back. They want to pass the ball. They want to try and connect between the lines. But and one thing that we don't have over here is we don't have 6'7" centre forwards where the ball goes from back to front, crash bang wallop, and everyone's getting whacked up from behind. So we don't have any of that. So that's nice for me, who's not 6'4", who's getting whacked in the back of the head every week. So that's good. But the one thing that we have to sort of battle against is the humidity and the sun. Although we don't play in the daytime, we play in the evenings because it's too hot. It's still very, very humid. 7:30, 5:30, 7:30. They're the sort of two game times that we sort of have over here. But honestly, it's hot, mate. It's still hot at that time. But you don't train at those times. You train at 10 o'clock in the morning, and peak hours are sort of 11, 12, 1, when you're still running around and you're still getting a tan, but you're getting hot. But mate, it's a good standard, mate. Very, very good standard, and I would recommend it to anybody who ever thought that if there was a chance of coming to Australia, come and enjoy it.
Are you planning on coming back to England to play at any point, or do you think you're going to retire over in Australia?
No, I think I've just had a little one, so who's back in the UK. We're trying to get them out here for the remainder of the season, but it's proving difficult at the minute. But just because of that, I think I'm gonna come back to the UK and see what happens next. I think I'd love to continue playing for one more year, possibly if not two, and then sort of try my hand at the coaching side of things and maybe management one day.
And that was going to be my next question. What are you planning on doing when you're over? So, management, is that the end goal? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just finalising the last couple of sessions of my A license over here. So I'm doing that. Hopefully pass that, and then like I say, continue playing for a couple of years. But ultimately, I think the one thing that I've seen, throughout my time is the transition from players to coaches, and the standard of coaching in the UK for the under 23s level, producing them for the first team, or even necessarily the ones who aren't playing in the first team, the sort of the lads who are in the stands but are still first team players. They need the help as much as anybody. So I wouldn't mind sort of trying to fill a gap somewhere in first team management where they look after the lads who aren't playing, and they don't just beast them on a day where they're not playing or something like that. I want to, you want to try and help them become better so that if they don't make it into your first team, they make it in somebody else's first team.
Nice one. Well, here on the Second Tier, when we do these kind of episodes, we like to finish off with 5 rather general questions. First one, which club did you enjoy playing for the most?
It's tough that, because obviously I had some really good times at West Brom, obviously getting promoted, playing in the Premier League, scoring my goal in the Premier League, but I spent my most amount of years at Southend. So I scored all my goals at Swindon. So it's very, very difficult. I'd have to say I really enjoyed my time at West Brom. I did. I really, really did. I think being around that sort of group of players, them giving me the opportunity to play Championship Premier League football, I think is something that I can't ever take back, and I loved it. I really did.
That's one. Best player you played with?
Robbie Keane.
Okay.
Keane. Yeah, just purely and simply, he was a level above everything I'd ever played with. I think he was always 2 or 3 steps ahead of everything. Just setting up chances for himself and setting up chances for anybody else, and just seeing the play develop was it was genius, mate. Really, really good.
I was trying to figure out which club that was for then, but then I realised it's for Ireland. Was he kind of like a role model for you? Because I suppose you're kind of similar players.
Yeah, that was it, and that was why sort of I was disappointed my Ireland career sort of finished when it did, because I would have loved to have been able to play with him and learn from him and for a few more years, but for some reason, one way or another, it ended after the sort of Euro 2012, 2013 season. So, which was a shame because like I say, I would have liked to learn a lot more from him.
Best player you've played against?
I can't. I can never pick one. See, when you've played in the Premier League and you've been lucky enough to play at international level, you come up against so many. I mean, I like international level: Portugal, Spain, Italy, England. Do you know what I mean? I've played against the best Spain team that won everything. I can't pick one. It really, really, really is impossible.
Definitely. Best manager you've worked with?
Oh, see, I'm going to say Brendan Rodgers because I worked with him at Reading in the youth team, and he truly was special back then. He's obviously gone on to do amazing things, but attention to detail on everything, even when I was like 16, 17, was ridiculous.
Yeah, everyone says that, who we've spoken to about Brendan Rodgers. Everyone says he is absolutely top class. Final one, worst manager you've worked with?
Sol Campbell.
Really?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, man.
Just purely because of what you were saying before?
Yeah, just things like, I mean, yeah, because the thing is, right, I expected Premier League legend, been at top clubs, Arsenal, Spurs, Newcastle, Portsmouth, expecting pure knowledge, just knowledge of the game, just absolute, like, just tricks of the trade. You know, it took it, honestly, nah, like, honestly, it's going to sound really harsh, and I hope I don't get any abuse for it, but it really doesn't surprise me that he's not getting another job.
At least you're honest. That's all we ask for.
Honesty, as honest as the day's long. Like, honestly, like, yeah, that's rough, mate. It is.
Yeah. Say no more. We completely understand, Simon. Simon, thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure, mate. No problem. Anytime.
This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks. We'll be back again soon.